I played in the 80s, but like when my last 2 years of college football, we played on Saturdays, film and lift on Sundays, Monday walkthrough with a 12-minute run for conditioning, and that was on the football field. So what you did is you would jog down 100 yards, and then on the way back, you had a 40-yard sprint zone. So you would jog 100, jog, fast tempo, we'll call it a sprint for 40, decelerate down, jog down. That was Monday. Tuesday was full gassers. Wednesday was full gassers, but a couple off. Thursday was half gassers, and then Friday was walkthrough, and you played on Saturday. So I don't have an issue, especially with linemen. Offensive linemen have to be the best conditioned player on your team because they play the most, they never sub out, and they get wrecked with the battles that they have on the line of scrimmage. And it's always funny to me where you see it all the time, right? You have this running back who runs for an 80-yard run, but there's two offensive linemen running downfield with him, and the running back taps out, but the two O linemen got to go back to the huddle and get ready to block for somebody else. So I think there's merit in longer based conditioning for all of them. Now, what I do think we did a poor job of, and this is where I think some of the coaches who are anti long distance was, as strength coaches and football coaches, we blew it on rest, and the rest times and the goal times were way too fast and way too short. Because especially now, you can and again, I can get confirmation with that based off of when GPS and practice data became much more available, and we could evaluate certain things that we could never evaluate with just a pen and paper. I can track yardages. I can track play times. I have data from 1998 Boise State playtime rest times of 2 years of games. When everybody's talking about, oh, we do data and we do technology. Our technology was a clipboard, a piece of paper, and a stopwatch. So what GPS has done now is confirmed a lot of things I believe, but tightened up some other things that were misconceptions and just typical coach speak, like run every play full speed or run every rep full speed. Well, now we know very few times do you ever get into full speed on a football field or any field for that matter. I just was at a presentation clinic this weekend, or excuse me, last week, where one of the coaches was talking about how they measure high speed yardages and high speed running on their practice field during practices. And my question was, what is high speed running on your GPS, let's say algorithm or formula is? Is it just a percentage of their best ever miles per hour? So on this gentleman's GPS, it was just a percentage of, if I run 20 miles per hour, it's tracking based off of 20 miles per hour. Where the packages that we used in the NFL was, our high speed running was based off of A cells and D cells and speed over 80%. So that's a totally different evaluation than just off of miles per hour. So this was something that I have to write blogs when I go to events for my work. And that's one thing I brought up was, hey, we have to be very, very conscientious when coaches are comparing things that we know that certain, what we may call high speed running, isn't the same. So there's a lot of things that I think, and GPS actually confirmed a lot of the things that I was leaning towards when I was in college. So I felt like I was definitely on the right path, and it definitely allowed me to feel more, not that I wasn't confident, like, okay, I did these kids right. As much as people might have thought I was beating them down, the only thing that I would have changed was my evaluation of that high speed running, where everything was supposed to be run at high, full, run every rep full speed, And when you looked at the yardages, the percentage of the total yardage of practice was maybe, let's just say, I can't remember, 10 to 12%. Like if I ran 3,000 total yards during practice, maybe 300 was classified as high speed running. So now how do you build that out where you need that garbage yards? Because that's that garbage yards is what you're building your aerobic base from, but you've got to be able to manufacture training for this high speed running. And that's where I would say going at it now, if I was organizing or consulting with a team, was utilize your change of direction work as your high speed running yardage. And then and I would just consider that on your conditioning days. I wouldn't consider high speed yardage on like what people now call ACEL and max velocity type days. I would consider that that's what I would call linear and lateral speed days. When I'm talking about my pure conditioning days, I'm probably going to do some type of circuit work with change of direction, agility based programming, a programmed agility, reactive agility. The good thing now is the coaches are so involved, I don't have to worry about position specific work, which is always, uh, for a lack of a better term, a poop show where coaches want you to do it this way, but a lot of times coaches don't even know why they're doing half their drills. But you have to appease them because they're the one. I don't want to overstep my bounds as an offensive lineman and tell them I would coach it differently. So you have to play the game. Now I don't have to play the game. You'll coach it and you do your position specific all you want. I'll take care of the general physical preparation and the specific physical preparation when it comes to the metabolic demands of your sport. If I can do my job right and you can do your job right and we join synergistically so we don't overtip the scale, there's a good chance we can get that kid better. And if he gets better and the rest of the guys get better, hopefully your team gets better. And if that can get us another win or two, the difference between going to a bowl game or going to a championship game or winning a championship, then that's all that you can ask. But the game has changed for the better, but the game has been watered down because too many coaches they're not using technology to their benefit, that's using it to their detriment. And I mean that by saying they are letting the data dictate how they're training most athletes. Now, I'll always relate back to football because that's where I spent the last 13 years of my career as a position, what I call a sports specific strength coach. So you can't, there's two things that data and analytics will never come up with: physicality and emotion. And these are things that cannot be overlooked. The emotional quotient of an athlete to be able to get up and get down when it's time for game day and when it's time to rest. And also, what data doesn't allow for is it tells you things, but it doesn't give you the full story. And one of my biggest pet peeves is like with velocity based training now. Now I'm not going to get into it, and I'm a tangent guy, Mike. So we go. I mean, whenever you want to stop me, just say stop. But like I am 100% in on peak velocity. I don't even my utilization of average is only when the weights are extremely heavy because I want to see where that athlete's push point is. But I don't like I train all my athletes now based off of what I call peak intensity velocity training. And that book will be coming out shortly. It's all in process, but it's based off of violent intention of moving any load with the intent of as hard and as fast as possible. It's got some data behind it. I've had some articles pop up where people have talked about this, about the compensatory acceleration, using accommodating resistance to improve your levers at certain points where you can stay faster longer. But I've come to the conclusion that we've missed the boat, especially what we talked about earlier. If I'm going to go to the field and train max velocity and max acceleration, why am I training and tracking average velocities in the weight room? And then we want to say these workouts don't mean nothing. Well, of course they don't. We're not training with the same intent. If you want me to be able to use bilateral movements like squats, deadlifts, cleans to really affect what's happening on the field, because that's all that matters in team sports is what happens on the court, what happens on the field. Nothing matters about how much somebody benches or squats. Then I've got to be more recognizable of I really like squatting. I think it's got a lot of value in athletics. Some would tell you, well, single leg's more important. I'm not saying it's not. I've drive a lot of single leg work, but at least, unless you're a high level professional athlete who doesn't play offense or defensive line and has no injury issues, you're going to do a bilateral squat at least once a week. I mean, that's to me, that's one of those ones that I have rules. That's one that's going to be hard for me to ever not do some type of bilateral squat at least once a week. Now, the other 4 exercises may all be single leg, but at least once a week, you're going to squat, and you're going to squat with intent. And these are things that came up after I was done with the NFL. We were doing dynamic effort like everybody else, but it really resonated on me where I keep watching and observing what's going on in the landscape, saying, yeah, we're missing the boat on this. And there's a lot more that we can talk about with these numbers that people are being utilized, but the one thing that's hurting most athletes are they're letting these machines drive their workloads. And what do I mean by that? And again, I reserve the right to be wrong. This is an opinion of 40 years of work. This is how many athletes, how many reps that I've watched, how many reps have I done? See, there's a lot of people and again, I'm not telling you got to be a world-class lifter, but there is benefit of training with the same intentions that you're asking your athletes to do, because it's easier to coach them. It gives you street cred when they see you doing it, but more importantly, you know what that kinesthetic awareness and emotional quotient happens when you train a specific way. So what I find is we're missing the boat with some of these devices that when people log in a certain velocity threshold, that, oh, if I don't hit the number, it automatically reduces loads for that athlete. So if you're training at like 0.5 and it's a certain load and all of a sudden you go under 0.5, well, it calculates how slower you were, and then it adjusts the load so you can maintain 0.5. My issue with that is in most sports, fatigue is going to happen, but the load of you yourself or the opponent you're playing against or the rhythm of the game does not change. So the simplest way I can explain that, and again, it's football, and it's I don't care what anyone says, it's relative to every sport, because this is how you monitor fatigue, and this is how you monitor what type of shape your athletes are in, and which I call power capacity, or more importantly, repeated power capacity, which most sports that we coach are. It's a repeated power capacity on short bursts followed by a little down. Short bursts, whether it's games like soccer and basketball, there's a slow pace, and then there's explosive pace. Well, that adds up over time. You've got to be in condition to do that at a high level from the first tip off to the last buzzer. And what happens when you're monitoring speeds and adjusting speeds based off of, well, I want him to be at this, but he went down, I adjust. You're not giving yourself a fair, what's the right word? Evaluation of what their conditioning levels are. So I follow Prilipin's chart with most athletes. And one of my favorites is a high volume Prilipin, 10 doubles at 79 to 88% of work. Well, that's only on a 2-minute turn. So like it's an EMOM, but it's an E2. So every 2 minutes you're rolling. It doesn't matter if it's 79 or 88, it's 10 doubles and you're on a 2. Well, if I was so concerned about adjusting loads, I'm not getting what I need to know from this athlete, which is how well can he maintain high levels of strength under duress? So it's more important to me to see reps 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 if the speed decreases versus me lowering the load, because that will tell me what kind of condition they're in. I'll never know what kind of condition they am if the weight keeps getting lighter every week, every set. And also, what does it bring up? Everybody wants to talk about, right? Mental toughness, another coach speak term. Well, you ain't going to build whatever you think that may be. You're not building that by reducing the load. You're building it by motivating and coaching. And we all know when you're doing stable sets of work for a lot of sets, you may lose it one set, just like in a game, right? I play a 15 play drive. Man, around play 10, you might get a little dizzy and get your butt whooped on play 10. And then you know what happens? You snap out of it and you make sure you don't do it on play 11. Same thing with 10 sets of work or 15 sets of work. And this is where I have a big, and again, it's debatable, right? I don't know who's right or wrong, and I'm not there. I don't really care to fight it. I'm just explaining why I'm going to use velocity-based training the way I do. Y'all can use it however you want. But what I've seen with the people who I've been experimenting with, there's two things. It's extremely mentally challenging. Because think of it this way. When you say 5 sets of 5 at average velocity, but if I tell you, you got to move 5 sets of 5, 25 reps, every rep has to be the hardest, fastest, most aggressive rep you could be, you already feel the pressure on that. You already feel it. So there's a whole mental component towards training that way. And I train a high-level professional strongman who actually is a college strength coach. So he's a professional lifter and a highly qualified coach. And we've been working together now for about a year, but it's taken him 6 to 7 months to understand what training with maximum intent and violence is, to a point now where even when we always track data, but even when it's not one of those types of sessions, he doesn't know how to move the bar any other way. So now these heavier loads, remember, these guys are 1,000-pound, 800, 900, 1,000-pound deadlifters. My athletes, done a clean and press with a log at 206 kilograms, 455 pounds. He's carried a 1,400-pound yoke on his back, 14 feet. You know, these are dudes that are doing things we're not supposed to. So when you watch this guy pull 700 for reps and you see his peak velocity scores and you watch it on tape and you're like, God, that guy's moving. I promise you, he wouldn't have been moving like that with that load if we weren't training with this type of violent intent for each rep. So the goal is how efficient can I get them to be? Because the faster I can get them to move, the less energy they expend. And when you're dealing with what we do, because everything's on a revolving rest, I always tell them, you want more reps? Move the bar faster. Faster you move the reps, because again, say if I'm doing sets of 5 and I'm on a 5-minute turn, so I'm going 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. Okay, well, if you want over 4 minutes of rest, don't dilly-dally. If you want 4:30, move the bar faster. So it's no different than when I tell guys the rest time is the minimum. The goal time is the minimum. If you want more rest, finish early. It's not a race for last, pacing yourself because the goal time's 15. If you are in condition enough to beat that goal time, and the other thing is, again, we all have those guys that are champion efforts, right? They pace themselves, and then the last one they win by 20. But then the other guys who've been running their hearts out, and by the last one, they're fatigued. Those are the ones you should be clapping for, not the guy who wins the last one by 20 when he was in the back of the pack for the first 12. So those are things and concepts that I think have to have more conversations. And I've always been fortunate enough that I've had enough confidence and belief in myself that I've created plans that really push the limits of what most people have read, push the limits of what people we all respect said, well, you have to do it this way. Hey, the greatest thing about training team sports is you don't have to even lift weights to be a good team sport athlete. I think we forget that. Like they were playing sports way before weightlifting was allowed in part of their training. And if they changed the rules tomorrow and said, "Hey, no one can lift weights ever again," I can guarantee you all 8 of those teams that are in the CFP playoffs will be playing in 2 weeks. So that's the other thing. Like, hey, as much as I believe and love what I do and believe there's a high amount of value in strength training and conditioning and all the things that a good performance program can bring to the table, don't get it twisted. They don't need us to play the sport. They don't need us. Now, I'd like to think we bring value. If we do things right, can we help them not get as beat up? Can we help them reduce the chances of certain injuries that we know that a stronger body can protect? Certain things are going to go, but there's certain things that I know and believe in my heart that a highly detailed and organized program with the right exercise choices can definitely reduce some of these things that happen at certain levels at a higher level of expense to the athlete instead of us more worried about. And I don't think it's happened as much chasing these weight room numbers because we have to turn things into coaches. Again, the only KPI that matters in team sports is winning. So that's my introductory rant. Sorry about that.
That was perfect. And it's funny because one thing that I've learned about you is that you're really big on culture. And one of my kind of overall themes and questions that I wanted to ask you was, and I'd asked a couple of sports psychologists who work with various NFL teams, a variation of the same question was that you have maybe college football teams or professional football teams. Every player is there for a reason. And I had asked them the same question I'm going to ask you is how much is momentum and culture very, very important, or even more so important than actual like sets, reps, and how skilled the players
Oh,
are?
yeah. Well, let's put it this way. And this is where, again, people who believe in analytics don't believe in that stuff. They are so driven by data, they don't believe that there's certain things called a flow state or I was in the zone. And I can tell you this, I coached a team that won 14 straight games in the NFL. Momentum's real. Like, believe me, more guys don't get hurt. And if they are hurt, they don't feel hurt. They don't want to miss. And there's a big thing about like culture again. Like I'm very I get ticky tack on terminology. Again, culture, mental toughness, right? Those are to me buzzword, coach speak words that are really a summation of numerous values. So, like, you can ask me what I think culture means, and I can ask you. There might be a couple of crossovers, but what's everybody say? Oh, we work hard. Okay, well, that's a value, right? Or we're tough, right? Okay, we're this. Okay, so what is that makes you mentally tough? Like, mentally tough isn't showing up at 5 o'clock for mat drills. That's I want to keep my scholarship, so I got to get up and do mat drills. But momentum and I like to call like things environmental factors that make people motivated to do things that possibly they don't want to. Like I always say, very few guys that play team sports love lifting weights. It's not their sport. It's my sport. I love lifting weights. I tell every year, no one's going to love being in the weight room more than me. And that should be the truth because what I found out is I love lifting more than I love playing football. And that's why I was a strength coach and not a football coach. I love being in the gym. I still love being in the gym. I love working with guys that want to be in the gym. But how do you build an environment that is giving to the guys who like lifting, but also giving to the guys who that's not their thing? And a lot of times it's not their thing because they're not as good in there as they are on the field. So that's where you have to be extremely diverse in your programming. Luckily for me, the way we program, there's a lot of ways to to stay what I call integrity focused on what I believe as far as what a program should look like when I see it, but very open to moving pieces around based off what you feel confident in doing. So, like I said, I'm always going to do a bilateral back squat unless you tell me, hey, man, I just don't do that. But what do you do? Man, I'll do split squats. Well, that's a squat. You do that tier one Monday, right? Like, or house. I don't like to do this, this, and this. What do you like? I like to do these exercises. Okay, great. In our world, these two will go on this order on Monday. This one goes here on Wednesday. These three go here on Friday. So everybody's doing the same type of plan. It's the plan becomes individualized. That becomes, again, what you said about culture. That's building a level of communication and trust. It's a lot easier in the NFL because these guys are very, very in tune to what they are and who they are. Early on, they're still living in that college, we tell you what to do mode. But when you get to about year 3, you start figuring out. When you get to year 5, you pretty much know what you need to do to be ready every training camp. And that's when discussions become great. When you get guys who are years 10 plus, really, hey man, what do you do? What don't you do? It's as simple as that. Like we get a new NFL, we get a vet. I used to say we were vet friendly. Now that didn't mean we caved. It meant that, hey man, I just want you to train, and when you come in, I don't want you to hate it. Well, if I give you the exercises that you said you like doing, you're probably not going to hate it. So that's where I think some of these coaches get so rigid about this is how I do it. This is what we're doing. But they forget none of that matters if you don't win on Sunday. So if I can get these guys to say, House is the man, House is going to get me right, and we win on Sunday, then I win. It doesn't matter about, oh man, I really wanted this guy to bench, but he had 20 tackles on Sunday. Does it really matter if he benches 400 for 5 or 400 for 1? And that's where I think you learn more about how to build relationships. And there's a couple of things that I thought I felt like I was stronger at certain things than others because of where I was brought up. I was brought up in the 5 towns of Long Island, a very ethnicity based, diverse. I lived most of my childhood. I lived right around the block from the projects, so I understood a lot more than most people when I came down south to go to school. And then early on in my career, well, not early on, but as I was climbing the career, you get introduced to different things. Like going out west helped me learn there's different dynamics to cultures out west versus cultures in the East Coast. So I know Northeast stuff, I know Southeast stuff from playing. Now I go out west to coach, and now I coach Northwest, Northwest up in Idaho. Then I go to Utah, where I spent 2 years really understanding the Mormon religion and how that affects the men, all missionaries, but the men that I coached on the football team and basketball team in particular, and the values that entrust in that. And that's a whole new way to having to learn how to adapt coming from New York and that. And then I went to Arizona, where now I'm getting a lot more California based and Texas based kids. So I was always fortunate that I had a really good ability to communicate with a lot of different people. Now, was I 100%? No. And that's where I learned that you can't hire yourself on your staff. You have to hire people with different types of personalities, different types of relationship building, because I'm not going to be 100%, but I got to have someone on my staff who can get to this kid, because you're always going to have some of these one-offs where they ain't feeling you. It's just the way it is. So that's the things so I like to call what we did in our weight rooms building an environment of, hey man, I know you all don't want to be here, but we're going to make it where when you come, it's not like we're berating you. We're trying to get you better. And we're not judging you on, well, this guy at your position group benches 300 and you only bench 185. No, I need you to bench 195, bro. Just like when I had guys, like I used to tell, we would talk about goal times. Well, if I'm running a 300-yard shuttle, my guys who run 4.2 aren't making the goal time no matter how slow I make it. And I used to tell the coaches, "Oh, McKenzie's out of shape," because that's one of my favorite players, and he was one of the fastest guys I ever coached. I said, "Coach, he ain't out of shape. That's all he got for that type of drill." But the good thing is he hasn't quit. He used to walk some of it. Now he doesn't walk. So watch when we get to our 75 play mock games at the end of summer, who's the fastest guy running around, because we built a good base for him to have the power capacity he needs to play 75 plays at corner. Sure enough, end of the summer, McKenzie's ripping it. And our time trial tests were always shorter distances. So yeah, he might be running 300-yard shuttles at the beginning of the year, but now we're running, 60, 40-yard shuttles at the end of the year, and he smokes the hell out of those. Well, yeah, that's in his wheelhouse, 5 to 8 seconds. So those are things that people need to understand, that the way you have to look at things are not to the guys who love lifting, so to speak, in the weight room. It's the guys who don't love lifting. And how can you make this an attractive place? That's why, you know, you've seen it even in football, right? Like now, I think it was, again, early to mid 2000s where teams started playing the guys' favorite music during a stretch and stuff to get them a little jazzed up, because the motivation sometimes wasn't high, which I always said, man, if you love football, do you really need this music to get, like now? People go, "Hey, what do you listen to when you train?" I put a TV in my room. I listen to sports radio in the morning. I train to sports radio. Like, hey man, I'm training. Like, I don't really need it, but yeah, I listen. My favorite music now is sports radio when I train. So when you talk about like culture and momentum, yeah, I believe that, because I've seen it in the weight room. I've seen guys get on a roll on that 10 sets of two, and it's just going. Well, hey, if you got 10 sets of two at 405, and after 5 sets you're smoking, we're going off the script. Add 20. Oh, you smoked that? Add 20 more. Smoke that. And then before you know it, on the 10th set, he just doubled his old 1 rep max in testing. So I'm a big believer in, when the going, and that's when I stopped really having pure training, like evaluation weeks, like we used to, where it was the whole week was like a powerlifting meet in the weight room, and then you'd go on the field, where we would just set. I became a big training match guy. Like, hey, if you're on a roll, let's go, because that's the strength I want anyway. Would you rather have a guy, or any athlete or a woman, would you rather have them go through a standard 1 rep max test where they do their prep and they get 3 attempts and they bench 100, or would you rather see them do 100 for two after doing 80, 90, 95 through a work sets? Like, we're getting ready to do that with my strongman athlete. He just did a 3-week wave that I established with variations of chain loads. And then this week he takes the chains off, and it's based off traditional 5x5 work. When in doubt, when you're talking about strength, stick to the 5x5 and vary up your resistances. But now what he's going to do is he's going to try to go for heavy singles, but he's going to have to do fives first. And then he's going to do some triples, and then he's going to do some singles, because that's how I need to know how strong you are when you're tired. And that's where relationships, belief, like, again, these guys, especially in this era, these athletes ain't just believing in you or respecting you anymore just because you got coach in front of your name. You better be able to prove and show you can help them get to where you can get them. And again, fortunately for me, with Tom, we've built that now to a point where, like, I talked to him about ownership in the program. Like, I'm your coach, but it's your program. You have to speak up, to a point now where I'm not allowing, that's a bad word, but like now it's like I have an extensive pre-activity prep program for our athletes, which most people call warm-ups. I don't like warm-up, because to me that's a very nonchalant term that people can say, what I call, they dupe around and do work and are all giddy. I'm trying to prepare to win. So our warm ups are called pre activity preparation because we're not warming up. We're prepared. We're doing focused drills and movements to prepare for the work that is going to follow. So, like, he has now learned enough about his own body where he has the template. Okay, Tom, you know what special exercises you need. You write the prep. You write the prep, and then I'll get the main session, and then we'll adjust as we go. Like today was a big evaluation day in our deadlift. He's training for the Arnold Classic. We had two options to go with. He brought up, hey, what do you want to do? And I said, you know what? I'm going to answer your question with these questions. But in the end, I'm going to let you choose. And he made a really good decision, and he wound up pulling a 5 RM in a variation of a deadlift that tells us, okay, we're ahead of the game as we go into what I call competition preparation for the next 12 weeks for the Arnold Strongman Classic. So momentum, 100%. You see it all the time. Guys get on rolls. I believe in that wholeheartedly. You can just feel it. Your body changes. I mean, and then culture, I like to call it environmental factors, is 100% getting people. It's again, when you listen to these coaches now, right? I liked Saban. I don't know if I could work for Saban. I like Kirby Smart. I don't know if I could work for Kirby Smart. But Kirby Smart the other day said something really important that I felt was really good when it comes to this day and age, when we talk about culture, right? He goes, look, we're going to work hard and we're going to fight and we're going to be physical in practice. And if you leave here to go somewhere else, then I want to play that team because I know they don't fight and work as hard as we do and are as physical as us. And I'm like, you know what? He is right. A lot of teams have forgotten that football is a physical game. And they want to know why they're not getting the results on the football field on Saturday or Sunday. It's because you're not practicing at that level at least certain periods a day, Monday through Friday. And that's culture. Like, when you go to Georgia, you're going there to get physical. Like, you're going there to get dirty, right? Where I know there was times when I was still coaching in college that it was known that if you went to this school, they practiced easy. But if you went to that school, you were going to get your butt whooped. And both teams won national titles, but you could tell the difference when you saw the way they played. So that type of stuff is, I think, 100% true. Like, I'm watching from afar. Like, I spent 9 years with the Carolina Panthers, and that was my dream job. And no one wants to get let go from your dream job, but that's the business at hand. So I follow them, and I've been watching them the last few years, especially with Coach Canales. And what you're seeing this year versus last year was, last year they lost a lot of close games. And everybody kept saying, oh, they lost a lot of, they lost. And I'm like, look, man, you're giving them moral victories. Losing's losing. Whether you lose by 1 or lose by 100, you've lost. Your record says what you are. You're a losing team. But what they had to find was, and this is where trying to keep the band together helps. What you found was, this was a team that didn't know how to win yet. They were competing better. Their performances had improved, but yet they didn't understand what it took to win. Now what you're seeing this year is a little bit of that transition to the next step. Now they're winning. They're beating teams like, how do you beat, you beat the Rams, you beat Green Bay, right? But then the next weeks they'll lose to the Saints. Nothing against the Saints, because the Saints and the Panthers is a very big rivalry, more so than any of the other teams. When I was there, it was us and the Saints. It was battles. But what you're seeing is this team's learning to win, but now they got to learn how to understand that win is only for that day. You can't let that. It's just like you can't let a loss lead to another loss. You can't allow a high of a win to be so high that now you have a letdown the next week against a lesser opponent. So again, as they put themselves in a really, really good position to make the playoffs. Uh, Again, I don't want to be a procrastinator or Nostradamus, but I would say if they make the playoffs, I mean, I could see them being one and done, but I can see them next year making the playoffs again and doing a lot better because it's just like when we were there. My first few years we were terrible. Then we started getting better. And our first year, we go to the playoffs, we play a team, the 49ers, who we beat in the regular season. But we didn't know playoff football. And people talk about speed changes. With speed changes, and we saw it, and they beat us at home. The next year, different story, and then we wound up being the first team in the NFC South to win 3 straight division titles. But it takes a process, and I give Mr. Tepper credit because he was blowing coaches out every 2 years, and again he was meddling. I don't care. I tell it to his face. You thought you knew ball and you didn't. Well, now he's kind of pushed away and he's allowed the football people to do football things. And now they're on. I mean, they've got 2 games left, and really, if things go the way people think, that last game against Tampa down in Tampa is going to be who goes to the playoffs and who goes home. So kudos to them for getting things corrected. But that talks to you about like culture. You keep the band together. If you got the right guy leading, like we had the right guy leading, Ron Rivera was the right guy to lead the Carolina Panthers. It seems like this guy is the right guy to lead after having a few changes where people are believing him. The quarterback's getting a little confidence, and the people are rallying around. They're playing better defense. They got 2 good running backs. Their offensive line is pretty stout. And so now they're getting into this process of understanding that, hey, we can beat good teams. But you can't allow that success to carry on where you think you're just going to roll off and not beat a team with a losing record because the NFL is not like college. The margin between a team that's 15-1 like we were and a team that's 5 is minuscule. I mean, the year we went 15-1, our loss on Christmas around Christmas week was to the Falcons, a team that 2 weeks earlier we beat 38-0. It's the NFL. So when you ask about momentum, flow, uh, culture, that's the difference between winning and losing. Everybody's got great players. It's can you get on a run? You see it all the time, right? Teams down by 14, teams down by 21. All of a sudden, pick six, right? Place gets juiced. Kick the ball off, 3 and out. Boom, offense scores. Place gets juiced, right? Oh, kick off again. Oh, fumble. Scoop and score. If you didn't believe in momentum and stuff like that, that team would have lost by 100. And now it wins. I mean, okay, look at the last 2, not this week, but the 2 weeks prior. Buffalo Bills. They're getting destroyed by Cincinnati and who was the other team last week? Baltimore, maybe? Whoever it was. They're down multiple touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Now they got the MVP quarterback. But again, that's belief, and that's a lot of and what is that? That's a structured team that's been together for a long time. They've weathered storms before. And that's 100% based off of what they're talking about in the building besides schematics. And that stuff matters. And if you have the right people, to me, in the ancillary positions like the off the field staff, like a strength coach, trainer, sports psych, nutritionist, your sports science people, which I call I call them more. They're analysts more so than they're data performance grabbers and things like that. Science, I mean, how much science is it to look at numbers? It's more math, finding out ranges and loads, and then your return to play specialist. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said, and I think again, when you get too many people who are forcing analytics down, it's just like this: people who use those analytic books on like 4th and 1 or when to go for 2, right? Well, it says you should always do this. Yeah, we're not playing very good. I'm not going for it. Or, hey, you have to go for 2 right now. Do I have to go for two right now? Like, my quarterback just got his bell rung, and my running back's limping around. What am I supposed to do? Or, hey, it's 4th and 2, we should go. Well, it's pouring rainstorm, and my quarterback has to take the ball under center or shotgun. Well, what happens if the guy sails the ball over his head because it's raining? So those are factors that book's not telling me. If you want to tell me, hey, 4th and 1 in a rainstorm, the odds of you getting it is this, that's different than, hey, on 4th and 1 from here, you should go for it. So I think, again, it's no different than we were talking about, like velocity based work. I need more. Like, you have to do it this way. Tell me why. Well, because the book says this. Okay, but what about if the scenario is this? Well, I don't know that. Well, then your book's not helping me. It's just like I got into necessary beats, but I used to say early on, when I still have some arrogance to me, but I used to tell people all the time, I don't read research because I'm the research. And then I'd have researchers come in and watch us train and go, man, you're 10 years ahead of the research. And I'm like, that's why I don't read it. And then my biggest thing was, and one of the high level researchers of our era in strength finally realized that when he was coaching at a high level team and getting to do stuff, is it's not that I don't believe in research. I don't believe in research that doesn't reflect the types of people I train. So I don't want to hear about the 25 people in PE 101 who are freshmen, right? Doing some ski erg test, and that data is supposed to tell me how to train NFL or high level collegiate athletes. No, when you can show me, hey, I trained 30, I don't even care if it's Division 3. I trained 30 Division 3 offensive linemen, and this is the results. I'll read that. But I don't want to hear, hey, we took 30 kids from the weight training 101 class and we did a bench press test. This is how you should train the football player. No, I got better data than you on the way I train football players than you'll ever have. So that's where I think researchers need to understand. I think it's gotten better. Like, I work very closely with the guys at the Jayhawk Performance Lab. I think they're one of the, again, not the only one, but they're the ones that I resonate with because I like who's in their building. But a lot of their research is very driven with athletics in mind. And they're able to reach out to schools that allow them to utilize athletes. I think I'm affiliated with the IUSCA, which is overseas. I think a lot of the research that they're putting out is more athletic based than most others. Those things have value. And again, most of the time, research is following review of literature. Well, I want to know what you're doing now. I don't want to know what they did before. And I understand there's a very meticulous way that research has to be done for these PhD students and PhDs and professors to get their things published. And I respect that because I've had stuff published in research journals as a co-author, and it's tedious. Like, it's very meticulous. So I respect, it's not that I don't, here's the thing is, just because I'm not going to read it doesn't mean I don't respect the work that goes into it. I think a lot of times that's what happens to a lot of people. Me, because I'm opinionated and I say a lot of my stuff gets twisted. Hey man, your work may not resonate with me, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate how much effort you put into that work. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of great stuff that's out there that I've never read that most strength coaches use right now. And it's not that, it's just that I know the way I work, that's not something I need to read. Now, I need to read that, I'm going to read it. Like, but when it comes to like the nuts and bolts of training, very, very little stuff's going to really spark my interest. Like, somebody's going to have to wow me. And a lot of times what you see is, well, this guy's doing this. And I'm like, well, that really derived from this. they've just expanded it and put it on steroids. Even my work with the tier system, if you really, really dissect the tier system, it's Bill Starr's program on steroids. So if you read The Strongest Shall Survive and you watch how that's broken up, that it looks a lot like a traditional model tier system, except that we vary order and we vary the order of exercises every day rather than keeping things the same and then one full day's heavy, one full day's moderate, one full day's light. We break it down where one exercise heavy, so we were doing concurrent type stuff and we didn't even know what the damn word meant. And that's the other thing. Like, I think people get really, really stuck on certain things. Well, I train this way. Well, do you? Because if I really broke down your program like I broke down mine, what you're going to find out is you're doing it a lot of ways, but you want to lump it into, well, I train like this because so and so trains like this. Well, I can promise you, so and you are not training identically, and you're not training exactly what the definition of that specific model says. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes than just running out of a tunnel on game day. And that's where I think the magic happens, where in the 2 points you brought. First of it is, can you build an environment when the guys show up for work, they're smiling, regardless. Like, I'm not saying you want to smile after getting your butt beat on the game, but by Monday, you should be over the loss or the win and know it's time to get back to work and let's go. Like, let's start the week. And you learn, like I learned early in my NFL career and probably in my college career too, that if you ride the wave of the highs and the lows, you're not going to last. And I got to that point where I was almost desensitized in the NFL. Like, we had just won the NFC Championship game, and my son was like, "Man, you going to the Super Bowl?" I'm like, "Shit, I'm worried about the injury list tomorrow." Like, and to be honest with you too, at that point, I'm a big believer in, if you don't win the Super Bowl, everybody else sucks. So I was like, "Hey man, we got there, but we have to win this. Like we have to win." And I'm not just saying that. I'm just saying that's what we're all here for. So even if we go to the Super Bowl and lose, really, in the end of the day, it's no different than the teams that don't make the playoffs, because that's the difference between team sports, where in individual sports, you still want to win the championship, but a lot of times, depending on the sport, right, they always recognize second place, and then in other sports, you have the podium, and then even in college and in high school in track and field, they'll recognize the top 8. So when I'm dealing with individual sports, we always talk about the top of the podium first, but podium finishes matter. Like, yeah, you can come in top 5, but top 3 is the podium. Top 5 is great at a lot of these events. If you can come in top 5 in a lot of these events, you're one of the strongest people in the whole world. But people remember the podium.
I guess you're not the person I should ask about load management.
Yeah, you can ask me.
What are your?
I think it's the same thing we talked about earlier. It's what load management. Okay, hold on. I have it written down somewhere. I take notes here. Here's what I'll say about load management, right? We hear about minimal effective dose, right? So here's my card. Here's my notes. I was actually talking to somebody else. I was like, "Oh, I got to write this down." My problem is minimal effective dose to be successful versus not doing enough. I don't think we're doing enough. And again, it goes back to this. If I'm expected to play at this level on game day, let's just say it's this level here, but I practice at this level the whole week, how am I supposed to play at this level? Like, let's take, for example, somebody who's on load management, right? Especially those on a return to play, right? I just had my knee scoped. They're building me back, and I'm going to practice here. And, I'm up to 20 minutes of full court practice here, right? So they're going to put me on a minute restriction on the game, and they're going to say, hey, we're going to open you up at 15 minutes, but I got to play here. And then they want to know why my knee's swollen the next day. I think it's huge to look at. Again, to me, the yardage, that's where I go back to. Look at the yardages. Look at the intensity of the yardages. If I'm not preparing the athlete to do that, how do I expect them to do that on a game day? That's why I laugh about we've let science dictate things that, again, you just talked about it. We just talked about it, where the role of momentum and culture and all this come into play now. Like, I can't expect, a coach can't expect me to play at this level if you practice me at this level. It's just like, here's another example. And this is why I will always champion the strength coach. And even when they get bashed, when things go bad, because at the end of the day, we only can control certain things. But when it goes to the season, for example, how many times have you heard coaches go, right? Best conditioned team we've had this summer. We've killed it. Our guys destroyed the running test, right? Well, I can tell you this. I can say more times than not, almost 100%. All that stuff gets thrown out the window the very first period of full contact practice in camp. It looks like those guys didn't do anything all summer. Anxiety, play recognition. My job's on the line. It's hot. I'm in full pads. I got a helmet on. Didn't get enough water. Was nervous. Couldn't go to sleep the night before. First day of pads, right? What conditioning does in that form is, I've always believed, especially later on in my career, the key to us in our conditioning program wasn't to prepare them to play the game. It was to prepare them to recover from practice, if that makes sense. And how am I going to be able to do that if I am doing loads or yardages that don't bring them and intensities that prepare them for practice? And that's where I think sometimes where you still hear some teams are still running 32 110s and all that, that is to build the more of, not so much getting in shape, that's to build that mental resiliency to be able to perform under pressure. So you have to put these guys in pressure positions. You have to train them at certain loads and certain time periods, depending on the sport, that's going to not affect their play at a high level. Why do most of the team, again, some teams are different than others, but like look at all the guys who they've learned over time. Very few teams are having super success with not playing their starters in the preseason and then just rolling them out week one. There's value in playing in the preseason. It's like warm-up laps at a NASCAR event. Have you ever been live to a NASCAR event? So I love NASCAR. So I've been in the pits. When you hear the cars cranking on the warm-up laps, like as before the pace car pulls off, you'll be like, I wish I had my earplugs. But when that checker flag drops, or the red or the green flag drops, that's a whole different loud. It's the same thing you learn about when you're not a playoff team and you get there and you're playing a team that's consistently in the playoffs. It's a whole different game. So to me, load management is just a bad term. Like we're talking about different terms and now this is new coach speak, right? Load management. That to me is a detriment to the sport. And let's face it, since that term has come into play, have you really seen any differences in the play as far as making it game better? No, I've seen and I don't have data, so again, I reserve the right to be wrong, but I see more injuries. I see really not a great product, but because everybody's doing it, the product looks the same across the board, right? But then you look at, if you do a deeper dive, I would say the teams that practice harder are the teams that are doing better. Like, hey man, Dan Campbell's practicing his teams hard. Now they're not winning as much, but when they went whatever they went last year, what were they, 15-2 or something ridiculous? Yeah, they had the most injuries and it caught up with them, but them dudes practiced hard. There's a reason why they were 15-2. I mean, you could say all you want when he said they were doing up downs his first training camp. He was building. That was his way of showing you, yeah, this is our load management, right? Like we're going to be ready. So I don't. I'm 100% by studying the yardages, studying the intensities, utilizing that, bringing people up off injuries. But we have to be careful of thinking that's the way to train a whole team. Individuals slightly different. Like, we had vet days where guys wouldn't, hey man, towards the end of the year, you're not practicing on Wednesdays. You've taken a beating. I can tell you, if you want to call load management, like how I tapered the year that Christian McCaffrey went 1,000 and 1,000, and hopefully he gets there this year. He'd be the first person ever to do it twice. The way we managed his weight room volumes were because he still had to practice hard. And that's why I say my goal is to get that athlete ready to be a full tank of gas on Sunday. So as his body wears out, gas, the amount of gas that we need to expend in practice is much more important than anything we do in the weight room. So then it becomes, now it becomes a balancing act. So that's where, I coach Greg Olson, and I don't think he would mind me using his name. Greg Olson is the most meticulous 365-day football player I ever coached. He was a leader by example, and I use that term very, very distinctly because a lot of people classify guys as a leader by example because they're work hard guys. But if nobody follows them, they're not a leader by example. They just work hard. Greg Olson had a posse of people who wanted to train with him. Whether he grabbed them or they resonated with him, Greg Olson had a crew. But Greg came in every year at the end of the year. House, this is what I think I need to work on next year. This is what we need to do here. What do you think? As he got older, I would go, okay, Greg, but what are we taking out? No, man, we're not doing it. I can't take. I go, Greg, there's only so much you can do. Like if I have a 20-gallon gas tank and I'm trying to put in 22 gallons, what happens? It overflows. And what happens generally when things overflow?
The malfunction.
Right. So, hey, man, if this is the amount of work we do right now and you're adding this, we got to remove some of the ancillary stuff that we don't need to replace it with the stuff that you feel is necessary for you to go in next year at a high level. Make sense? So that's where, it goes back to, like I said, with the VBT. They're load managing volume, they're load managing speed. When no, I got to see if the guy can get there. I got to see if they can maintain what they can maintain. And then it's my job to get them in condition to be able to do certain things. And if they can do that, then we add more weight. But load management is a term that I think I understand the term, but it's definitely, to me, when I hear it, more people see it as a negative term than a term of usage, if that makes sense. I think a lot of people will. I don't think I'm wrong. I've watched the one thing that you learn when you're away from the games. You get a totally different perception, and I've always said these last 6 years that I've been away and being able to see things from a 30,000-foot view rather than the ground level gives you a much different perspective. It allows you to say, man, I was doing things right. Or, man, I blew it here. We were in between here. Should have done this. Like now, like I've learned certain things now that I tell people all the time. If I went back to the NFL, hey, I'm an elite programmer. I'm not going to shy away. I'm not apologizing for what I am. I'm twice as good a programmer for an NFL player right now than I ever was in 9 years. Ever. I'll go to my deathbed on that. If I could go train an NFL team right now, what I've learned in the last 6 years, especially my front, I would be bringing a package that, how everybody goes like in Olympia, Ronnie Coleman's package in 2003 or Jay Cutler's package the year that the quad stomp. I had a really good package for 9 years, and obviously, your players help you, and probably that 5 year run in the middle, man, we had a really, really ideal package. But the package that I would bring now, I would feel like the guys would really resonate for wanting to come into our weight room.
This has been incredible. I gotta hop on another call soon, but I want to thank you for taking the time and talking about this. And it's funny because I really didn't want to talk about like very specifics with strength and conditioning, and you touched on all the important pieces with respect to culture and momentum and mindset, and like that's why you've been able to be as successful with your athletes as you have. It's been really incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you reaching out. And again, thank you. I hope I didn't bore anybody. And as usual, these are just, I feel like I'm in a position now to I've been fortunate where people believe I've made a significant impact in what we do. And if I can share enough to, one, like I said, help you affirm something or confirm that, hey, I thought that was true, or no, okay, if he's saying it, then I'm in good shape, or that's bull crap. Or I think a lot of times I really believe if you're listening and comprehending what I'm saying, it'll at least give you something. I always tell people, I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm trying to stimulate thought. And again, if I change your mind, great. If I don't, at least I got you thinking. And I think that's all anybody can ask, right? Like I tell people all the time, like I'm writing several books this year. One is the updated version of the tier system, but it's not going to be everything. I got to keep you guessing. Like I got to keep you asking questions. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's going to be a lot different book, almost a total rewrite. I didn't even look at the old book, but I want people to put in work. I'm not going to give you all the answers. And I think that's important to go put in work, because that's the only way you can go on the floor and say the program has your ownership. There's a lot of people that do the tier system different than me. Great, because now you've taken ownership in that model of training. You hear a lot of times, a lot of these coaches leave a school and just, hey, I'm an assistant at Joe Schmo University, and when I leave, I'm just taking that program. But you don't know the nuts and bolts behind it because you didn't learn it. You just did it because they did it. So I think a lot of that goes on. So there's a lot of things that I think we need. We need independent thinkers is what we need. We don't need people just regurgitating things that they read in a book. Like if I asked you, hey, tell me about the dynamic effort, and you go, well, Louis Simmons says that. I'm going to go, no, Mike, I want to know what Mike knows. What is your definition? What do you think? How does dynamic effort fit into your program? Because again, I've learned a lot from Louis. Been there, talked to him face to face, and there's a lot of things that I believe he helped instill into college athletics and pro athletics with a lot of these things that I do personally. But I also think he missed the boat on certain things he would say about team sports. And again, that's my judgment and my opinion. But no, that's again, I appreciate you having me, and again, hopefully I didn't bore anybody. Thanks again for reaching out. That was big of you. Appreciate it.
Where can people follow you so they know when your books are
Same
coming
way
out?
you did, man.
Instagram, yeah.
Yeah. I spend my biggest social media platform is Instagram. And as you saw, I mean, I do check DMs, and I also, not as much as I'll check like the requests. So I'll see something that may appease me, and again, I'm not 100%, but I'm very good at responding, because I remember when I was coming up, I didn't like being ghosted. What people use the term ghosted now, I use it because say okey doke. But yeah, so you can Instagram. My website's www.bighousepower.com. I don't even know if you have to say www anymore. That shows you how old I am. That needs some work, but that's another place. But generally nowadays, I mean, I it's funny because when Instagram and Twitter and all that came out, I used to tell people, hey, if you want to talk to me, find my email, because if you DM me, that ain't going down. And now it's like, you know, you got to roll with the flow, man. It's like, hey, how do I get in touch with you? Just DM me on Instagram. I'll send you an email address. Yeah, that'll be it.
Awesome.